Hey, welcome to Naturally Mad. I'm Mads, and you are very welcome. This is my space for raw, authentic honesty, and I gotta be real. Something that's come up my whole life, from my perspective, is I just keep falling in love. I just keep falling head over heels and head over heels. It's like I'm tumbling down this hill. And a lot of the time, people that know me and have known me throughout my life and journey, they see it as like recklessness, that I can't be alone or I'm uncomfortable and that I just need someone in my life all the time. It's really not that. I'm so happy alone. I love being alone. My alone time, I love doing my own thing. And that's something that people really struggle with themselves. So I can see where this perception that people have with me, where I keep going into all these relationships, they see it as like that insecurity because that's what they resonate with. That's what's probably in them and whatever their situation is. And I've definitely been in it, and that's why I'm so happy and comfortable in my being alone and in my own skin now. I've had so many situationships where you stay in them because you are just comfortable and you're like, what if I die alone? What if no one wants me? What if I'm too much or not enough? It's so weird thinking you're both too much and not enough at the same time. Because you're like, that doesn't make sense. I feel it, I get that. I've been there. And it's been a hell of a journey getting to this new point where I'm like, I feel that, I vibe with it, but that's not me anymore. And, trying to explain that to people that have known you intimately for a long time just don't see it. They see the journey overall and just think I should be this broken thing. Like, how am I still standing? I don't know. I just keep going. I keep going through this journey in life, and honestly, it's like the universe just throws me new opportunities, and I see it that way. It's like, here, try this opportunity. Or, oh, you grew from this experience? Well, awesome. Here's the next experience. And it's just a constant on-bringing just because that's who I am. I am very much not someone that can remain stagnant for long. I have my peace. I'm in my constant peace of happiness and growth mindset. And people can't resonate with that because they haven't experienced it for themselves. A lot of people feel frantic and chaotic. And from the outside looking at my life, it is frantic and chaotic. But because I exist in it, I live in it and accept it all and transmute it in my own process that I have honed throughout spiritual practices, psychological knowledge. So I have quite an in-tuned intellect into this life's journey, as well as an emotionally mature feeling towards it and understanding. Then I have the spiritual, which is like the energetic and the spiritual side of it. So I know to really transmute it and like sink it into my body, I have to sit with it and feel it openly and accept these things. And then, depending on what it is, you might have your imagination goes down like these rabbit holes of memories of where those things came from, and it'll bring up and arise uncomfortable feelings. But the key of what I've learned is that you then need to let yourself feel those things and consider them and understand them and look at them as if they're a child. And that's been a lot easier since becoming a mum. I'm now a single mum with two young kids, 5 and 2. Both of them have their own journeys and have their own versions of what they need from me. And I can see myself in both of those different versions. So I try things that I would want myself, and it really works and resonates for them. So then from having that outside perspective, I sort of went, oh, well, maybe this is what I need. I can bring that back into, well, I know myself. I need to give that to myself. It depends on what the situation is and where you're at in life. When I first embarked on this journey, I did need that outside support a lot. One of the best advices that I ever got, and I've said this to so many people, this was my best friend. She said, sometimes you need to tell that voice in your head to back the F off. Sometimes, like a friend that doesn't have that boundary and it's just like really bothering you and putting so much pressure on you, and you just avoid them because you're like, oh, it feels so draining being around them. That's your mind. You honestly have to look at it and sit with it and be like, I've had enough. Like, I don't need you to keep pestering me and essentially being a bitch. Like, stop being a bitch. I don't need this shit. I've got enough going on in my external reality, in my life and world. I don't need it in here as well. I know. Because you know what you're going through. You know where your issues are, your faults are, your insecurities. Then everyone, including me, everyone is going, well, how do I let that go? But that's the key ingredient that's missing. It's because we're not telling our minds to F off. You know, it's like constantly having this person, like the angel and the devil on your shoulder. It's constantly having that devil just throwing it in your face all the time. And you're like, I just want some love. You need more of that angel. And maybe that's where that comes from. I've never considered it in that sort of way, actually. But I definitely have those two sort of perspectives in my mind. I personally probably consider them more like a spiritual ego versus like a human ego or the ego. But they're all saying the same thing. You know, it's essentially like you have this good moral mindset where you're like, no, leave me alone. She's going through a lot at the moment. Like, and then the other one's like, no, you need to do this shit and you need to like put pressure on yourself and keep moving forward and go, go, go. Everyone needs that sometimes. Sometimes you really don't need it. Anyway, that's just probably something I've noticed. So when people look at my journey and they can see that I keep moving forward through so many things quickly, I think it can be explained through more of that spiritual quantum physics side of things, where what I truly believe is that I am bending time because my perception of what I'm going through becomes transmuted. I let it go more easily than most people. So then time in this linear format folds and I get the new opportunity because I have learnt and had that growth mindset and I've moved forward from that life experience. That growth mindset is so important and it's definitely something that everyone resonates with, but it's like we all treat it like it's out of reach. The more I've learnt about it, I exist in this growth mindset. I have my whole life. I always see what I can get out of a situation, what someone is in my life to teach me. And it can be as small as a greeting to a stranger. It can be as big as your parents' influence on you. That's the whole point of the life journey. That's what we're all here as humans to experience. We always hear it's about the journey, it's not about the destination. And yeah, but I think a lot of those sayings, we've been so desensitized to them that they've lost meaning. I believe that's what I'm here to show people is how messy and chaotic it appears, but also you rapidly transmute it and create the life you want following that. In my experience, I have come across a lot of what I would consider spiritual leaders, and I seem to be definitely one of the youngest. I know that there is people that are my age that are channelers or, very spiritually in tune. I'm not special in that sense. But I do get that reaction from a lot of people where a good friend of mine, she said, it's so shocking how spiritually in tune I am, emotionally intelligent I am, and I'm so young. I love it. It's one of the greatest compliments that I get because actually experiencing this life of chaos and drama and heartache and judgment hurts. It hasn't been pleasant. It's not like I'm running through this life selfish and not considering other people and their feelings and emotions, and that's exhausting. I've been extremely empathetic my whole life. I started with this. My biggest concern always was, not wanting to be a burden to my parents because they were stressed and busy with their work all the time. And that's one of my earliest memories, is wanting to make their life easy. So I've always had that. This, what seems like a reckless journey, has taken me through so many experiences that, like I said, time has kind of folded where, yes, I, from a lineal perspective, age-wise, am quite young. But because I've felt so much and experienced so much and overanalyzed and looked at every single little detail and all the patterns and where that comes from and how it's all intertwined, and I'm self-taught in so many things because I just have interest in so many things. I link all these patterns together and I'm like, oh, that's where that comes from. That makes a lot of sense. It's never off. That's just how my programming is. I don't switch that off at all, which is why I move through it very quickly. So then people see this side of me, not quite knowing the journey, not quite knowing my experiences specifically, And they look at me and just go, how? Where does this come from? Why do you seem wise beyond your years? I guess on that, I absolutely am an old soul. I actually always say I'm an ancient soul. It's very old. That's where I've designed this journey for myself that's so heartfelt, so emotionally driven, so intellectually analytical, because I dove into that human experience of the body and living in this. I've had physical ailments my whole life that have really kept me on this path, going from, I can't eat high sugar diet, I can't eat a lot of preservatives, I can't eat many processed foods, and I'm not celiac or anything like that. I clinically suffer from migraines, is what I was diagnosed with, where it's actually inexplainable. They can't explain it with medicine. So I got a very broad diagnosis, and essentially they put it into an intolerance where I just have so many intolerances that trigger pain, nervous system pain. And I'm very grateful and blessed to have that, because it keeps my system very cleansed and grounded. And I absolutely needed that throughout life because of the roller coaster journey that I went on with everything. And it's not to say that in that journey I couldn't have made different choices. I look at those choices and I go, man, what if I made this other choice? And, the typical thing is that people always say, yeah, but you wouldn't be who you are. And don't get me wrong, I'm so proud of myself. I love who I am. I'm not proud of my journey, and I'm not proud of a lot of the pain I've caused others to trigger their journey, to be a catalyst in their journey while catalyzing my own journey. Although I'm not proud of that, I look at those choices and I absolutely do wish I made a different one. I wonder what would have happened if I went this other way. Because I can pull it apart, I imagine those avenues, and I'm absolutely grateful for everything in my life. It's not that I'm ungrateful, but it's that there would have been something else. I think that's a reality that none of us really acknowledge or accept, because, the grass is always greener. We have that saying. And for that one moment, that one blip of the actual choice, yeah, grass is greener, maybe. But also, when you've really experienced traumas and really experienced grief and heartache and the really tough times, you can't help but say, I would have chose different. Some of us, yeah, we would. Don't lie. We all try to have this facade where it's like positivity, like we got to be like super upbeat and don't worry about it, which is, yeah, absolutely great. But that's how I transmute. I accept all those things. I am aware of them. I know them. I don't push them away. But I also have an understanding and knowledge that there would have been something else. To learn that lesson, even if you made that other choice, another catalyst would have came up. Or say it was like a guy, for obvious examples, because a lot of my life's journey has involved romantic relationships because of my daddy issues. With a guy, I would go, I wish I stayed with him, or I wish I didn't meet him, was another one that often come up, but I wish I stayed with him is more the ones I regret. With those moments, I was always so concerned about what everyone else thought, what my future would hold, where it would go. I was really trying to control, really gripping. But, and this has been a very recent journey realization for me, transmuting this very recently, I then look at it and go, well, something else would have happened. And maybe it would have been more traumatic because I really love that person. Maybe it would have hurt more. There's also positives. But I think the biggest thing with the grass is greener is that, say in that example, we look at it and we go, I could have had this magnificent life. We look at it from like these really rose-colored glasses where it's like super positive. That would have been the change that made all my life better. I guess I look at it from this really grounded place of, actually, it could have made it worse. How would I know? It's having that balance between this positive and negative. That really helps to bring back to the present moment and go, well, actually, I accept that. And my journey's led me to this part. And it's easier to bring it back to yourself now than looking at the grass is greener, because that grass could have been artificial. It could have been artificial grass. It's just fake entirely rather than dead grass. It could be dead grass, whatever. Doesn't matter. And then there's those guys that you wish you didn't meet. Could be worse, maybe. Could have been better, maybe. Could have done without a few relationships. But again, then, the typical saying, I wouldn't be me. I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have the things that I love now. But maybe I could have. And then it's really important to just sort of know that that stuff isn't real. It's really more what's important. Like a really grounded understanding that it's irrelevant to your life. What are you going to do? Stop living because of that one thing? That particular experience that I talk about, where I absolutely could have done without that. I had a really spiritually enlightening experience through it. I completely had a catalyzing moment that changed my reality and how I looked at things, how I perceived things. I wouldn't be here sharing with you if I didn't have that. I absolutely hit bottom. I had to hit bottom to learn how to go back up and find the surface and take the deep breath. And what it did was free me. It freed me from everything I'd learnt about what I should do, what I shouldn't do, and really came back to understanding what I wanted to do, starting to question why I didn't do what I wanted to do. What even was it that I wanted to do? What did I want to do? I had no idea. I didn't have a dream. I didn't have a purpose. We all look for that. And then there's sort of the two ends of the conversation. There's life's meaningless. We live, we work, we sleep, we die. Or there's everything has meaning, where every little impact, butterfly effect, every little thing that we do impacts everything else. And there is this greater purpose for everything that we just can't understand. There's so many people looking for the answers. It's just not something we're meant to understand. We don't need to. It actually doesn't impact how we live our lives at all, not knowing that. It's this great debate that everyone's having. And I very much believe both, which people don't like. Everyone's always like, you gotta pick one or the other. It matters how you treat others. It matters, what your journey is, the impact you have on others. I learned that very, very, the word that came to my head was tragically. It was a hard lesson to learn, the impact you really have on people. I now have an understanding of why monks take vows of silence, because they do not want to impact other people's lives, even with just the magic of their words. It's important for them to take this vow because they want to observe and experience the life. They don't want to interact. They don't want to influence. I completely appreciate that. From adopting that, there's a greater purpose, I guess. Then you also bring it back to you and you go, well, if I'm not supposed to know what that is, doesn't matter. And you come back to the other end where it doesn't really matter. I just want to do what I want to do because it's all about this experience in this life. It's funny, actually. It brings me to, I'm a very big advocate for YOLO. Not in the way that it became super popular with all these adrenaline junkies and they'd scream YOLO jumping out of planes. I have no interest in jumping out of a plane. In fact, that is silly to me. If anything, it's the opposite of YOLO, because if you only live once, why would you risk your life over and over and over again? Testing death. That just seems silly to me. But that's just me. I know for the human experience, life experience, people love that stuff. They love that feeling specifically. I guess my version of that was always leaping headfirst into love and relationships and loving them. It wasn't even that I needed to be loved. It was that I wanted to love them. I had so much to give that I wanted to make them better. I wanted to make their life better, that it could be this magnificent place. All the time, it was actually at my detriment. It hurt me because then I'd always want to make them better, do what they want to do, make them have this amazing experience in life. Through my journey, I've realized and really transmuted in my system, always doing everything for everyone else is not my human experience. It's not my journey. Where's the balance in that? Especially when I had that catalyzing moment of real spiritual growth, intellectual growth, emotional growth. When I looked at that and I realized that I never put myself first. I never did anything for myself. I was so happy when this happened. It was really, really confusing. It was like this being torn apart mentally because I was so in love with this idea. I had everything I wanted. I wanted to live near the beach. I wanted to have time alone to myself. I wanted to be healthy and do yoga and meditate. So I was really grounded as a person in all these really beautiful practices. I spent all my time with my dogs and just explored. I just explored where I lived and it was beautiful. And I had what I considered at the time the love of my life. Happy. And then I realized that I really wasn't happy. That I'd gotten everything I'd asked for. I got everything that I had this idea of. And I looked around and was like, but why do I feel awful? So I'm happy, but I felt awful and I felt anxious all the time. I like really had this huge problem with like anxiety for months where I felt like I was going to die. It was just like this feeling of imminent death. It was extremely intense. And, then I started looking at it really and I was like, well, I spend all my time cooking and cleaning for this other person. Not all my time, a lot of it, when I was actually at home. So I loved being out of my home. I loved exploring. I loved walking on the beach. I would like walk 9 hours a day. I was constantly walking around. I would do an hour of yoga because I'd just stop on the beach, do yoga there. I was meditating 2 hours a day. But then when I was like in my space at home, I was so unhappy and I felt caged and imprisoned. I was like, where is this coming from? Because I got everything I asked for. Then that was when I started really looking at who I spent my time with, who I gave my energy to, the people I was surrounded by, and really started listening to their interactions with me because it wasn't in me. So it was this really out of balance experience of my aloneness and then the interactions I was having with other people. And it come full circle back to being so empathetic because I was taking on all these different energies around me and it actually wasn't me. It was, my ex at the time was, it's called something I forget. Someone told me the other day, but he was extremely controlling. Like I wasn't allowed to watch movies that I wanted. I wasn't allowed to listen to music that I liked. I didn't talk to him about anything I was interested in. I was very isolated from family and friends that I'd grown up with because we moved an hour and a half away and he wasn't interested in being in any sort of world of that either. So I put away a whole side of myself, but it was the essentially human side. It was like my personality. I put my personality aside. And then I guess that was why I had a spiritually enlightening experience because I literally wasn't allowed to do anything that I enjoyed as a human in this human experience, other than exploring, other than like this one thing, connecting with nature and grounding and exploring. So it was a really weird, and it's very hard to explain to people what I went through. And it's taken, like, that was 6 years ago now. So it's taken like this whole time to really be able to balance between the two things where I'm happy alone, I'm happy going exploring and doing all those things. I live in a very similar place that I love and I can do that. But I also have this healthy balance of like, I have all these interests, I can do all these things, and I've very much became particular with who I spend my time around, who I essentially energetically interact with, and for a lot of people that, are still around, you can't just like become this hermit from society forever. That's not the human experience. That's not part of it. But there's so many grounding practices. There's so many things that we can do to learn how to protect ourselves from that, to control those interactions, and I think it's completely underrated. I think it's only really recently become something that more Western culture, I know Eastern culture absolutely has practiced this stuff and it's embedded in their history and culture and spirituality, but Western culture is very, based around deal with it, essentially. Like how I was raised in Australia was very much, that's just how it is, get on with it. And it's becoming more of these are boundaries and psychological conversation, which is absolutely fantastic. But there's this energetic side to things that people are not talking about. And that's where this empathetic side comes from. And, the really interesting, what was a really big light bulb for me that this is important to start talking about was my young cousins that are all teenagers really struggle with interacting in society because of this energy transfer. So there's all these really anxious people wondering why they're so anxious. There's so many people with depression, anxiety, and then there's so many people that are on the spectrum now with ADHD, OCD, and autism, and all these traits that make it really difficult to interact socially. And I grew up with them all. I absolutely had them. But I've said to my cousins, I think a really big part that helped is that I was raised by the village. I was raised by other people. My parents were so busy with work. So I was at daycare from when I was 8 weeks old. And I didn't leave, I didn't finish university till I had my own child. And then, and then you've got your kids around you all the time. So I've never been alone, which is why I love being alone. But I've always had this interaction with strangers or, social groups around me that have really helped me grow and taught me how to interact with people and how to read people and where this, how I feel about things and this analytical nature. So it was very much honed in on people specifically. I wish and I would love it if I was like this high functioning person that could channel it into something like, I don't know. I met someone that he was on the spectrum and he channeled this high functioning nature into he was creating an AI to recognize this particular type of protein that is found in breast cancer. So anyway, he was 21 at the time. He was loaded because he just developed all these AIs and things that were for the medical industry. And you meet those sort of people, you're like, how? Like, it's just so amazing and fascinating and so far from what your own reality is and your own perception that you're like, it becomes this like superhuman person. But we all actually have these abilities within us, and it's just that one particular thing, that's his journey, and ours are all different ones. Where my one particular thing that actually someone pointed out to me, I didn't realize it. She actually pointed out that my thing I ended up hyper focusing on, having this high functionality on, was learning about people in general, just different peoples and their journeys and how it sort of works and how it then gets integrated into this human biological system and the physics of the external system. And anyway, and that's been my interest, and it's not like a clear-cut job. So then I've sort of wandered around being like, I don't know what I'm doing, and people don't really understand it about me, and they don't understand it because they can't relate to it, because it is actually from this like high functioning perspective where I just see patterns in everything, and I see patterns in people, and I see patterns in how the world interacts with each other and nature, and people see it as chaotic, but I kind of understand the chaos. And that's where I've like been like this wildflower my whole life and grown up as this wildflower, just kind of like, invading and then being torn out of the ground and then like trying somewhere else, being killed with pesticide, and then you just keep going and you keep trying because you're a weed. I love that I'm comparing myself to a weed right now. But, you let that weed sit and grow, and it's beautiful. And it ends up being this like magnificent like flower that it's like this societal connotation that flower is not supposed to exist. It's not supposed to be there. It's a bad thing. And I looked at myself like that for a long time because I was always told what to do or how to do or how to be. And then I stopped wanting to and wondered why or where I lost myself, why I felt so lost, why I didn't have all those things that everyone else, like everyone just seems like they know what they're doing and they've got everything together. And it's one of the biggest illusions of especially becoming a parent. The parent thing where it's like, oh, I thought my parents knew what they were doing. And then you actually have kids and you're talking to your parents and they're like, nah, you just wing it. Try your best, wing that shit. And you hope that you're doing a good job. And that's why we need that community as a parent, because we want that like external validation that you're like, not creating a sociopath, like worst possible scenario. We've all thought it. We've all had it where we're like, oh my God, my kid did something weird. Like, what do I do about it? And you freak out a little bit, but, nothing that warrants putting them into like, therapy. They're a kid and they figure it out and you're figuring it out. And it's this illusion we think we're all supposed to have everything figured out and everyone else has it all figured out. And it's not true. Like so much of our world that we live in, especially social media, is an illusion. Just not too long ago, I was staying at a hotel and I was like, oh my God, look at that 20-something-year-old with like, what was it? It was like a Lamborghini. He's like gotten into this Lamborghini and I'm like looking at it like, how do I do that? Like, how do I get there? And the guy I was with at the time was like, no, they rent that stuff. They rent that on social media to give the appearance and the illusion and the appearance that, he's wealthy and successful and famous and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, really? Like, I just think I'm such a genuine, like, truthful, authentic person. I'm so trusting, like, to a fault where people are like, I don't know how you don't have a guard up. And I'm like, I actually trust first and then, like, assess it, Like, I'll give everyone the opportunity, like complete trust and authenticity. And then like if it just doesn't resonate with them or like something happens, then it's like, no, and they're like cut. And it's funny because there's the two sides of it where people go, how are you so like open with people? And then I cut them so like easily, and they're like, how do you just do that? Like, it's so cold and bitter. And it's like, well, I just don't have the guard up at the start. Like, most people do it the opposite way. And honestly, I think it's more efficient the way I do it, because you have your guard up and you know, spend all this time like sort of slowly taking down these walls and getting to know someone. And then you've built this like trust, and then something happens, a catalyst happens, and your whole world falls apart. And I'm the opposite. So my world doesn't fall apart and I'm fine. And people see me as like being this cold, heartless person. And I'm like, well, I think it's just efficiency, because it's more like the trust is all there, and then it sort of just depletes. Seeing more of like, you know, the interaction or the red flags or whatever it is. And then I have all these very obvious reasons why I go, nah, not for me. You know, I've built the story already, and then I go, yep, cool, I've made my decision, I'm sticking with it, I'm good. And yeah, a lot of people can't do that. There's so much doubt, you know, even in just having that decision of what they want or what they need, and they're trying to ignore it. I feel like I dwindled off my point though. I think I was making a point and then I sort of like went down this bit of a winding path. But you know, I'm just going to embrace it, and that's just me, because honestly, I believe if you lose a point, maybe you weren't meant to make that point, and if it evolves into something else, maybe it was meant to go there. So it's just kind of releasing that control, embracing chaos, but chaos in a natural way. I think there's a really miscommunicated like look or perception on chaos where I've heard it around. It's starting to become more popular, I think, because people are looking at nature more as opposed to like societal structures. And nature is like the reality of this existence on Earth is, if humans all got wiped out, the Earth is going to live. The Earth would survive. Plants would take back over. You know, we've all seen, there's so many apocalypse movies, and, you know, the buildings all get consumed by, you know, plants again, and the earthquakes shift everything, so it all starts collapsing and turns into ruins. That's nature. Nature just continues thriving. It doesn't really care. You know, it doesn't really care if there's control. It sort of just trusts that things will just happen how they're supposed to happen, and then it integrates it. You know, that's really what it does. And it evolved to suit it, you know, like there was a big thing I noticed when there was all that talk about the bees going. So there was two parts to what I noticed. One part was there was the movement and awareness, and people started caring. Fantastic. So we all started, you know, having those at-home bee hives and supporting the natural bee communities in our immediate surroundings, planting more native plants and florals to get them up. So there was the obvious, like people started making change. The other thing I noticed, which I know not many people spend that much time alone, and especially spend it in nature. I know a lot of people wish they had more time to spend in nature. Maybe that's your call to do that. But also knowing that nature is just right there. It's around you. It isn't somewhere in a forest somewhere. We are part of nature. Me sitting in my house right now is nature. We're not separate from this natural occurrence. It's a very, very big illusion that we think we're above these things, and we are not. We are absolutely part of it. And that is what people are talking about by living in the moment. It's to notice everything around you, to notice, you know, what integrates into your world and what leaves. And anyway, so back to the original point of bees. Just sitting in my backyard, because I like flowers. I'll have flowers in the house. Sitting in the backyard. It's not a far away from nature thing, is it? But it's nature. Even if it's, you know, formed into pots and a garden specifically, it's still nature. I noticed that flies started landing on all of my flowers. Butterflies too. They were already sort of there. I noticed more butterflies though. And they weren't just drinking nectar. They weren't just going and landing on the flowers that had nectar. They were landing on all the flowers. The flies were landing on all the flowers. Why? Can someone explain that to me? Because there were less bees, but then a different species started picking up the slack. I'm just going to leave it there because I don't need to know. But my point is that nature integrates. Nature finds a way. It evolves. The key thing is we're all trying to control it. We're actually trying to stop evolution naturally. We're just trying to stop nature. And it's not from bad intentions. It can be good intentions. It's not really about intentions, but it's realizing, recognizing what your intentions are, where they come from, what level of impact you want to make, and then making active choices towards those things, you know, but also trusting the chaos. Like, I'm not going to sit here and not encourage bees. Absolutely not. But what that thing that I noticed did was it helped me build that trust that it's not hopeless. It helped me build that positive mindset and growth outlook, because I saw it from a higher perspective of just this living organism that we reside on. That is it. We reside on this living organism. So yes, we need to look after it because it's our home. That's where we chose to live. And the reality that people don't like facing is that if we are the pest, if we are the problem, if we're the fungus, it'll retaliate. So yes, that's the one side where it's like, do your part. The other side is it will still try to, like a virus, you know, your body tries to fight it. Your body releases all these different methods on, you know, symptoms, different things trying to fight whatever the virus is. So I assume, because I don't know, I assume that the difference in activity with flies and butterflies and different insects, where it was picking up the slack for the bees as sort of some sort of symptomatic viral response. Nature will find a way. And one of my favorite and best sayings that I say to my kids all the time is find another way. When things don't work, there's always another way. It's just that plain and simple. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate you so much for your energy and your time, because it is the most expensive currency we have. That's the reality. So I hope you have an absolutely wonderful rest of your day whenever you're watching this. I hope that you really resonated with me and what I was speaking about, because honestly, I'm a little bit scared. I've never really been accepted because of my views and beliefs. So this was very much just a jump on, give it a go, see if it's received well. And I look forward to interacting with you in the future. Thank you so much.